Hey, this is C&D channel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC 172. Overall, really good card as far as the fights go. I mean, the worst card was actually the women's fight, Duke versus Correa. But even then, I didn't think it was a super bad fight or anything like that. It wasn't like a grinder or anything like that. It was just the worst, out of all the fights, that was probably the worst one there. Excuse me. A lot of highlights to this card. We got a good amount of submission victories, some really creative ones from Luke Rockhold, Joseph Benavidez, some flying knee knockouts, one punch KOs. Just some really good performances. So this is a really good card overall. As far as the bonuses go, Joseph Benavidez and Chris Beal got performance of the night, and Gomi versus Valley Flag got fight of the night. My picks, not too bad, 7 out of 10. I missed Anthony Johnson versus Phil Davis. Max Holloway versus Andre Fili, and Betchy Correa versus Jessamine Duke. Let's get started. John Jones defeated Glover Teixeira by unanimous decision, 50-45 across the board. I mean, what can you say about this fight? That won't make Jones look just awesome. It was a very dominant win. It was interesting that Jones fought. He had this really nice strategy. Well, first off, he did a standing arm lock that you learn in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, and it seems like that standing arm lock in the first round was what attributed to Glover's hurt shoulder that needed to be iced. It was really cool to see Jones also use a strategy of bringing Glover against the cage, use hand fighting and trapping, and start unloading dirty boxing. Really strong elbows, some uppercuts. He slipped punches too, which is good, but he still used the stiff arm. And that's actually a big talking point in this fight. I guess this is one way you can kind of discredit, John Jones. The eye pokes, man. I mean, that's just got to stop. I don't know what's happening here. John Jones has no reason not to do it, though, because the refs only give him a warning at best. I know what he's trying to do, and he did it a couple times. He just pretty much palmed Glover's head, and sometimes would just hold the top of his head, and then make it really hard for Glover to get any range. But yeah, for the most part, I really liked Jones's ability to hand trap, dirty box from those hand traps and whatnot, and keep doing that against the cage. There's a new wrinkle in John Jones's game. I will say this though with Jones, and I guess this is criticizing him more. I guess, after a fight like this, he looked amazing, but you also got to be critical, too, at the same time. His wrestling, I don't think it's as strong as it used to be. I have to say, you saw that in the Gustafsson fight, and in this fight in particular, it's not as good as it used to be, I think he took Glover down once or twice, but Glover went right back to his feet. It was because one of the biggest strengths with Jones, besides his takedown game, is his ground and pound is really good as well. I mean, he didn't necessarily need to use it against Glover, but it seems to have it doesn't seem to be as strong as it used to be. Regardless, though, still a dominant victory for John Jones. It's been said that he gets Alexander Gustafsson in a rematch. Should be an interesting fight. I'm thinking Glover Teixeira gets like the loser of Cormier versus Henderson next. You can go with the Shogun fight. You can give him Jimmy Manuwa. Maybe even the loser of Bader versus Feijiao. So there's a lot of good fights for Glover Teixeira next. With Glover, though, I mean, this is his last. He's what, 33, 34, or something like that. That's his last shot at the title. But not to say that there aren't big fights for him. Like I said, those are some pretty big names, like Shogun and the loser of Cormier versus Henderson and whatnot. So still a lot of good fights for him. You know, if you want to give him the loser of like Jones versus Gustafsson or something, that'd be cool too. I would mind seeing Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira. You know, I think that'd be a pretty cool fight. You can also go Glover Teixeira, Phil Davis. That would actually work as well. And speaking of Phil Davis, he lost to Anthony Johnson by unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. This is picking Anthony Johnson to win wasn't too like far-fetched or anything like that. I think him dominating in the manner that he did was not something that many predicted, except for maybe the really hardcore Anthony Johnson fans. But I think this kind of undersells a lesson in MMA wrestling here. Phil Davis, his credentials, NCAA Division I, credentials. I think champion too, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure. No, I don't think so. But he has those NCAA Division I credentials. Anthony Johnson has junior college NJCAA experience and was the NJCAA national champ for Lassen Community College in California. Credential-wise, Davis blows him out of the water. As it applies to MMA, Rumble blew Davis out of the water. Because when you add strikes into the mix and whatnot, it's just such a different story. There's something a bit karmic here in a sense, because to the build-up to 172, Davis was totally overlooking Johnson and trash-talking John Jones. It was just one of those things where like he seemed to have like disregarded Anthony Rumble Johnson. And another thing about Davis, you gotta say, his striking is just not that great. He doesn't have much power in his strikes. He looks very robotic doing it. A lot of people are saying maybe he needs to change camps, get out of Alliance. He doesn't sit down on his punches really well. And it's the Alliance thing too. Movement over like power, really. He took some really good shots from Johnson, actually. So credit on it for his chin. But man, I mean, he looked like he didn't want to be there after a while. He'd take shots, he'd retreat a couple times. Makes me wonder if he needs to change camps. He's still 29 years old. He's 6 years into MMA. So I think there still is a very small window for him to improve. Because he's going to need it, quite honestly. A lot of people don't think he beat Machida. And he also got out-wrestled and outstruck by a guy with weaker wrestling credentials and Rashad Evans as well. But talking about Anthony Rumble Johnson here, man, takedown defense, solid. And this is probably his best just overall performance rate. Cardio, solid. His ability his variety of striking was really good. His composure was really good too. Didn't go too crazy. Just stay composed. Just kept doing what worked. He would strike and defend takedowns, and he'd phase shift between the two really seamlessly. And he looked huge, man. I mean, gosh, how did this get to 170? It boggles my mind. I think just everyone's mind that Anthony Johnson was 170 at the time. I mean, he was like, he's still big Phil Davis here, man. I mean, he just looked ginormous. I mean,
Great performance. Probably not. He's definitely going to be in the discussion as far as future contenders for John Jones. Because the list is small. It's Alexander Gustafsson, then the winner of Cormier versus Henderson, most likely Cormier, and then Anthony Rumble Johnson. And after that, maybe Phil Davis. So he's definitely in running. I think he should. I don't know if he should kill contenders. I wouldn't want him to get winner of Cormier versus Henderson, for example. Maybe some lower, like winner of Beer versus Faisal. I know those guys are lower ranked. It's just that, I'm not of the opinion of killing a contender if you don't have to. Who else can he get? Yeah, I think that's one of the better ones for him, to be perfectly honest with you. If you want to give him someone like Little Nog or something like that, I guess you can give him something like that. Otherwise, there aren't too many good guys, especially coming off wins, that I can really say. You could go Johnson, Glover, Teixeira, but once again, if Teixeira wins, Teixeira's not getting a title shot, so there's no point. That's why I'm thinking Bader for a winner, Bader versus Faisal. And with Phil Davis, maybe Jimmy Manuwa, Shogun, loser Bader versus Faisal, loser Cormier versus Henderson. Okay, next fight after that, Luke Rockhold beat Tim Bosch by submission in the first round. It was a Kimura that ended up winning it, but the setup was just really good stuff. He pretty much reversed the single leg. On the sprawl, pretty much got a reverse triangle choke. A lot of people should probably do that even more. It's not the worst position. It's somewhat of a precarious position if you lose the triangle, but Rockhold was really comfortable there and started to work the triangle, but then when that wasn't working out, worked the arm. Bosch was going nowhere. So it was just a really good performance from Rockhold. That's another thing here too. The people that are expected to won, but they won in very impressive fashion as well. Whether it's Jim Miller, Joseph Benavidez, or Luke Rockhold. And John Jones, actually. Rockhold called out Vitor Belfort next. That kind of makes sense. You could do the rematch with Jacare. There's kind of this idea of killing contenders there in middleweight, but it's actually getting better with contenders. You can also, he called out Belfort, which makes a lot of sense because Belfort's probably the next in line after, for the winner of Machida versus Weidman. Rockhold versus Belfort. It's definitely a title eliminator. An immediate title shot for Rockhold wouldn't be the worst thing in my opinion. I know it was a while back, but he did beat Jacare and Tim Kennedy in 5-round bouts. He caught out Bisping, but Bisping's coming off the loss to Tim Kennedy. It's a name, but otherwise, it's a step down for Rockhold. Maybe if you want to go lower, somewhere else. The winner of Munoz versus Mousasi wouldn't be too bad a fight for Rockhold. But, quite honestly, yeah, a title shot wouldn't be the worst thing for him. Belfort's a good, logical matchup, I think. As far as Tim Bosch, his title aspirations are gone. He got by. He's definitely a guy that got by on toughness, Not really on technique, but toughness. And it showed in the Okami fight. I don't think he won against Lombard. Hell, I don't even think he won against C.B. Dalloway. But otherwise, at this point, he's something of a gatekeeper at this point. He's a tough guy. He'll be a tough out for a lot of guys. But,
Yeah, he lost to Munoz pretty bad. I mean, if you want to go Bosch Bisbing, you can go there because did schedule that fight before. Otherwise, maybe I'm just giving more mid-level guys at this point, or prospects. If you want to give like Tim Bosch versus Brad Tavares, comeback fight. Maybe Tavares can win that one, or use him as a gatekeeper. Give him like Lorenz Larkin. I know Larkin's fighting someone, and I totally forgot who. Or like give him like Luke Barnett or something like that. Just guys like that. He's kind of a gatekeeper at this point. Next fight after that, Jim Miller beat Yancy Medeiros by guillotine choke in first round. Good guillotine choke here. I mean. And he hit him with Medeiros with a really nice body punch, which is cool because I didn't think that Miller would like outstrike Medeiros. There wasn't a lot of striking here to really say he totally outstruck him, but he did land a clean body punch that really got Medeiros. And then that guillotine choke, great stuff. Set it up really well. Put him to sleep. Medeiros tried to fight it. It was kind of cool because the post-fight celebration consists of him, like, as he's asleep, petting his head, kind of looking around, celebrating while still lying down and getting off the bottom of Medeiros, he called out Khabib Nurmagomedov next. Actually, wouldn't be the worst fight, Jim Miller's on a 2-fight win streak. He's perennial top 10 guy. He's around like that 8, 9, 10 range. So that's not the worst fight because no one wants to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov. If not, maybe Donald Cerrone. I think that'd be a cool fight because Cerrone's coming off the win over Barboza. And I've wanted to see Jim Miller versus Donald Cerrone for a while. Next fight, that Max Holloway beat Andre Fili by guillotine choke in the third round. Great fight. Just a great fight overall for these guys. I mean, one guy's, I think it's Holloway, that's 22, and Fili's 23. Something to that nature. I could have switched it around. Maybe Fili's 22 and Holloway's 23. This is the first submission victory in Max Holloway's pro MMA career. It was a good one, too, I picked Fili to win. This was definitely a fight I thought, was... I was very hesitant with that pick. One thing that really showed was Holloway's just overall experience, UFC experience. This guy's fought Bermudez, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. He's fought some pretty tough competition in the UFC with some mixed results, His composure is always really good. He just strikes really well, and he's shown improvement. I like what I see from Holloway. I like what I see from Fili too, but he's just a bit wild. But he's still relatively new. With Holloway, I'm thinking a step up in competition. The only people I can think of though, but that's not really top 10, would be like the winner of Lentz versus Gambarian or something like that. Otherwise, maybe like a Hakan Diaz or something would work. But I think Hakan Diaz is coming off a loss. Those guys are primarily grappling-based fighters, though. But Holloway actually has some pretty decent takedown defense. He did pretty well against Dennis Bermudez as well, who, did manage to take him down. I thought Holloway actually should have got the nod over Bermudez, to be honest with you. With Fili, just more lower to mid-tier guys of the division. He's still a developing prospect. Both these guys have really bright futures. Okay, on to prelims. Well, what's also cool about this card, man, the pacing was really good. I mean, it was just like, after the victory and the post-fight, they even showed the entrances too, a lot of times, especially on the main card, they just went to the next fight. So there aren't too many fights on the card too, and the fights they had were pretty decent. So, we got to see like Chris Beal knocking out like Patrick Williams on like the FS1 card and whatnot. I think they showed Castillo versus Brenneman as well on the main card. But yeah, on the FS1 prelims, Jesse Benavidez beat Tim Elliott by submission in the first round. Elliott looked pretty good here. He managed to get takedowns on Benavidez, got a nice crucifix position. So yeah, but once Benavidez got on top and set up that guillotine choke, it was really, really cool. He got a performance of the night for it. He pretty much trapped Elliott's arms into a mounted guillotine, and Elliott had to tap with his feet. So, Elliott's a good fighter, but, very wild guy. Very wild, unorthodox fighter. Benavidez was expected to win, and unfortunately, as much as some people are saying, hey, Benavidez is still really good, but he definitively lost to Mighty Mouse. So it's kind of like a third fight is really hard to sell between Benavidez and Mighty Mouse. So with that said, I'm thinking maybe like a Brad Pickett would be a good next fight for Benavidez. You don't necessarily want to kill a contender, You can do Benavidez versus like Zach Makovsky. If Makovsky wins, then he's an immediate contender. But otherwise, it's a case of like John Fitch or Rich Franklin or something, or Junior Dos Santos, where it's like he keeps killing off contenders. And Pickett actually kind of is a contender, but at the same time, he's also a veteran too. It's one of those things where it's like I don't think too many people believe that Pickett could be like a real threat to Mighty Mouse at this point, even though like he did beat him a long time ago. You could give him the winner of Jorgensen versus I think it's like Martinez, I think, or something like that, I guess, as well. With Elliott, maybe the loser of Montague versus Horiguchi, or maybe like Neil Seary next for Brad Pickett. Or for Tim Elliott. Eesh. Next fight was that Takanori Gomi beat Isaac Valley Flag by unanimous decision. It's funny. Gomi still got it in a sense. He's still a brawler with good takedown defense. Still got the heavy hands. He doesn't look too... he's still on the downslope, but he's still managed to look decent these days. He doesn't look old yet. That old yet. Like Nogueira old. Or even Isaac Valley Flag can look kind of old. Fun fight, though. Valley Flag is quite a pressure fighter. That's his game, too. He doesn't... On a technical level, he's not the best striker. He's not the best wrestler. He's just this big, burly guy who pressures opponents really well. That's his thing. But with Gomi, he's a big, burly, kind of out-of-shape looking guy who pressures opponents. When he gets pressured himself, he can look pretty bad. But, he looked good in this fight. Managed to hit Valley Flag with some solid shots. I thought they should have maybe called the fight off when his eye, was pretty much shut. Otherwise, it was a fun fight. I think Valley Flag's on a losing streak now, so I don't know what they do with him. He did get the fight of the night, so maybe they keep him. But more just lower to mid-tier guys in the division for these two. Next fight after that, Betsy Correa beat Jessamine Duke by unanimous decision. This was interesting in the sense that Correa called out the rest of the four horsewomen. That's Ronda Rousey, Marina Shafir, Jessamine Duke, and Shayna Baszler. Actually, and quite honestly, Baszler is a great next opponent for Correa. I think this also just shows how raw Jessamine Duke is. She can't use her range really well. She was utilizing some more judo takedowns, which looked pretty nice. But, she seems lost in certain phases of the game. When opponents getting close, for example, it's like her go-to is like clinch knee. She doesn't really have much else. And she still needs to work on using her range, because she's really tall and whatnot. When she was put on her back, she's in side mount. She didn't really seem to know what to do there either. I think she got back to her feet, though, which is pretty cool. Good for her. But yeah, she's still a very raw prospect. Betsy Correa, though, just beat Ketsi, now beat Duke. I'm thinking, Baszler would be a good next opponent. Maybe Amanda Nunes is kind of high up there, or maybe Jessica Andrade next for her. Okay, next round, that Danny Castillo knocked out Charlie Brenneman 21 seconds in the second round. I don't know what else to say, but I think Brenneman should be cut from the UFC. I mean, this is 2 losses in a row. Unless it's Beneil Darius in his last fight. He got dropped and then choked out. One thing about Brenneman, his striking defense is just terrible, and his chin's just not that good. He might, considering he's been knocked out a good amount of times or dropped, he might want to consider taking a pretty long leave of absence from MMA, or just flat out retiring, because it's just not good for his health. Especially he got knocked out the way he did, man. That was just a brutal knockout. He looked good in the first round. He showed his wrestling and his grappling skills on Castillo. Castillo managed to even take his back near the end of the round, but Castillo's actually showing a pretty decent right hand. He knocked down both Michael Johnson and Edson Barboza. He's a solid fighter. Just a solid lightweight. He'll win a couple and lose a couple. His stand-up's good. He's showing some power. His wrestling and overall grappling, though, are good. He's like a good gatekeeper type, solid mid-tier. Not going to be a title contender at this point, but he's a good fighter. Great knockout here, man. But Brenneman probably cut, and I'd even recommend, I'm not, it's not like I can tell him what to do, but in my personal opinion, you might want to consider retirement or something from MMA. And finally, Chris Bale beat Patrick Williams by a flying knee in the second round. Man, great highlight there, Patrick Williams, though, he needs some work. I mean, that guy, seriously goes from pretty much one side of the cage, runs at the guy to throw strike. I mean, his entrances to his offense consists of him more or less running at the guy. And then his exits are literally running, I mean, that's the thing. It's just he doesn't have that skill yet to really close distance and do it correctly. That's the thing. And it's still a fun fight. It was really wild, though. Good one for Beal. He's not a guy that's shown in his career to have or on his resume at least, to have that type of knockout power. But great flying knee. Chris Beal, he looked good on the ground too. He actually got back to both times he got taken down. He actively tried to get back to his feet and managed to do so. So, always impressed seeing that from fighters. The ability to get back to their feet when they're taken down. And then he showed some good boxing as well. And that's highlight reel flying knee against Patrick Williams. Good stuff from Chris Beal. It's more lower to mid-tier guys for both these guys of the division. So, that's it for my post-fight analysis for UFC 172. If you have any comments, just leave them below. That's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.